So I'm making this video as part of ethical hacking for level 6, and this is the first task that you have to do, which is to set up your virtual machines by installing VMware, and then we're going to use Kali Linux as a tool for you guys to be able to do some ethical hacking. So we need to get you to do an installation. So first things first, this document here is step-by-step instructions. So this video is designed to help you to get through the installation, and if there's anything that you're not sure about, you can refer to this as a way to gain information about how to complete your installation. So first thing is virtual machines allow other operating systems to run on your computer. So you can have Windows at home, and we can run Kali Linux as well. So there's all those various bits and pieces there that you guys can have a look at. There's notes on this that are on Moodle. Feel free to have a look at that if you'd like. But if you want to pause this video at any time and read what's on the screen, or slow down in terms of what you're doing with your installation, then feel free to do that. So when you set up your VM, you'll be configuring it with a certain amount of memory, and you'll create a virtual hard drive and allow it to access the processor on your host machine and things like that. So again, one thing that you'll have to learn is how to set up a VM in terms of the settings to be able to run it, as well as being able to do installations onto your virtual machines. From that perspective, make sure that your system has plenty of RAM. I've got 16 gigabytes on my machine, which allows me to run 4 gigabyte VMs quite easily. If you've only got 8 gig of memory, you might be able to only use 1 or 2 gigs of RAM for your virtual machines, and they might not run quite so quickly. But nonetheless, please try and think about your spec of your computer. Maybe an upgrade might be necessary. RAM isn't super expensive, but obviously you might need to think about that if you are thinking of running a lot of virtual machines. You already know what Linux is, really, to be honest, because we've already studied that as part of your course in semester 1. This semester 2 class takes the information and the knowledge and the experience that you've got from using Linux and allows us to run Kali for you to be able to use it. Obviously, you'll also need some networking skills, security skills, various other bits and pieces. But why are we using Kali Linux? Well, if you look here, Kali Linux is a distribution of Linux specifically produced for penetration testing. So a pen test is when you use various bits of software, for example, the ones that are built into Kali, to try to break into a network that should be secure. Of course, that's what this particular course is all about, and of course, that's what ethical hacking is actually all about, or hacking is all about. Of course, one thing that we'll have to think about is the difference between hacking and ethical hacking, but that will come up as we talk about different things that are inside the course. When you do this work, we would like you to complete an e-portfolio. You don't need to log every single step, you just need to log things that are noted in the lab with a picture of what seems to be a CCTV camera. If there's one of those images next to an instruction, that's when you need to take a screenshot to put it into your e-portfolio that you can then complete and then submit to Moodle. It just shows us that you've been able to do the work. Obviously more on that as we go through. So each week through the course there will be a lab activity, so there'll be other things to log as well as this piece of work. So we're on to getting VMware. Now, because you're a student of Edinburgh College, you can get a copy of VMware Workstation Pro for free. Version 16 is the latest one, and you can use this link to be able to go and find the software. Suffice to say, I'll put that link into the chat at some point or onto Moodle so that you guys can see it, and then you'll be able to use that to go and download your software. The process of doing that involves basically accessing the website, and then when you are able to log in and all that sort of thing, using your college email as your username, etc. Workstation Pro is available down there. Click it, and then what will happen is you will be able to do a download. Now, you can only download this once. You do get a license key as well, so you need to make a note of that, and you need to keep a copy of the software because, you know, if you lose it, it's kind of gone. So suffice to say, you go onto the website, you obtain it by clicking Add to Cart. As you can see there, it's free. Once you've clicked on Add to Cart, then, you know, if there's some sort of logging in, then so be it. You'll just need to do that. Obviously, please don't use my credentials, they're mine. But suffice to say, that's what I mean by using your college email address as your username. Suffice to say, if you need to register, go ahead. I've already registered. And when you have that software clicked on, if you go to the cart, which is up there in that top corner, when you go to the cart, you will be able to basically click checkout, which means that you will be able to click download. And then suffice to say, when you get onto that particular screen, you can click download, and then what will happen is the executable file will download. It'll take a couple of minutes. Yeah, save it onto your desktop or somewhere so that you know where it is. I'm using Chrome, by the way, which is why that particular screenshot looks like that with that thing down the bottom there. But suffice to say, it'll probably end up in your downloads folder. I've decided to just put mine onto my desktop. When you get the installation file, it'll look something a little bit like that, version 16. So double click it on it to run it, and you get your first screen, and you click next, and use the license agreement, accept the terms, click next. And then in terms of the custom setup situation here, select both options please, and then click next. And in terms of this bit, I chose to not join the VMware Customer Experience Program, but I did decide to go for updates. I'll show you in a minute that the updates actually didn't take, but nonetheless we can run them at any time. But select your choices there, click next. I've elected to go for a desktop shortcut and a start menu entry as well. So, oh, file copy, should be file copy. I'll correct that. So that takes a little bit of time. At the end, you click finish. Well, actually, don't click finish, click license. Now, when you get the download option from the web page that allows you to get VMware Workstation Pro version 16 downloaded, you will also get a license key. So you enter your license key into the space there. Please don't lose your license key. Please write it down. If you don't use the license, you get a trial version that will last for 180 days, but it's not that long. If you do a license install, which is free, of course, as I've already said, it will last you for a year at least. Suffice to say, put your key in. Probably be careful when you do that so that you don't make a mistake, etc. Click finish. You'll need to restart your computer, save any open files, and go ahead with the restart process. And then when you run VMware Workstation 16 Pro for the first time, you may or may not see an update scenario. Now, what happened with mine is I went to do the download, it started to do some downloading, it did some downloading and all that sort of thing, and then wait for the process to complete. It takes about 5 minutes. And then what happened is it gave me an error, so I thought I'd run it again. It gave me another error, and in the end I just cancelled it because you can update at any time. Using 16 as opposed to 16.1 will be fine. Suffice to say, it's up to you if you want to do the update, but you should patch your software and use latest versions and all that sort of thing. That's good practical security. That's good practice for security in terms of keeping your system safe. So in the end, as I'm saying, it doesn't really matter too much about the updating, but obviously do keep it up to date. Run VMware Workstation Pro. You get a screen that looks a bit like that. I've already got some VMs installed, so that's why I've got a list there. Your list would probably be blank because it's a new installation with no VMs already set up. Install VMware tools. You can do that at different points. It's in the menu system inside VM. It's grayed out here because I've already got them installed on my machine, but do have a think about that because it does give you certain options like sharing screens and all that sort of thing that just makes life easier. The keyboard and mouse is pretty much automated. You just click in and out, or you use Control and Alt, press both keys at the same time to release the mouse from the VM. But suffice to say, the tools, they just help with all that sort of background VMware running kind of processes. So anyway, for your work portfolio, you will need to add a screenshot of that. And it should show that you've got a nice long evaluation period because it's a new installation. So there you go. So that's the first piece of your portfolio work sorted out because you've completed the installation of VMware Workstation Pro version 16. Next bit, getting Kali and getting that installed. So one thing that you want to bear in mind is if you're installing Kali Linux, it does put on certain tools that antivirus would consider to be malicious software. So if you have the antivirus running, when you do the Kali Linux file copy, the antivirus will probably stop the file copy from actually copying over all of the files. I'll show you an example of that in a little while. So the thing that I would suggest is that you disable the antivirus before loading Kali Linux, and then disable your antivirus again whenever you're using that VM, so it doesn't delete any of the files that you may be able to use for your various ethical hacking exploits. So go into kali.org/downloads, and inside there's that one, which is the net installer, Kali Linux 64-bit net installer. That's the one that you want to be getting hold of. So go and get that. Do your download in terms of click it and get the ISO file this time downloaded onto your machine. It's pretty big, might take about 10 minutes. Again, that looks like that because I'm using Chrome. You may be using a different browser. Wait for the download to complete. If you're not sure where it is, try your downloads folder. It looks a little bit like that. Kali Linux 2020.4, etc., etc., etc. So again, move the ISO file to somewhere useful. I put mine on the desktop because it means that I know where it is. And then we have these instructions here, which is the next part of the process. So start VMware and choose File / use the Create a Virtual Machine option. There's an icon there as well. And then what you do is whatever happens, you end up with a new virtual machine, and you go onto the new virtual machine wizard. Custom, click Next. Change the compatibility if you have to workstation 16, and then click Next. And then here it's asking you to use an ISO. That's what we'll be using. You need to click Browse, and then you need to find your file. It might still be in downloads. I put mine on the desktop. That's why I know it's easy to get to when I browse. That just helps. Click Next, and then follow these instructions as well. Change to Linux and base it off Linux 10.x 64-bit. Okay, and then, excuse me, itchy nose, click Next, and then sort out these various bits and pieces. So give it a name, call it Kali 2021. I've called mine Level 6 Kali 2021 because ironically, well, it's not irony really, but there you go, I also teach a level 7 class. So I've got two VMs, one's level 6, one's level 7. You're just using Kali 2021, that will be fine. So next, and then number of processors 1, that will be fine. Click Next. Talking about RAM previously, so I've selected the amount of RAM that I could use, 2 gigabytes there. Click Next. Just go with NAT for networking for now. We will change that later on, but we won't be changing that today. When you run the VMs though, and we set up different sorts of networks, that's something that you'll look at. So Lab 2 will actually be showing you it'll be showing you how to use networking inside VMs and VMware, and also it'll we'll see when we get to Lab 2. You'll have work to do on that as well. So NAT, click Next. Just go for the defaults here, recommended, LSI logic, don't worry about it, click Next. Again, we'll go for the recommended, this type of SCSI, don't worry about it, click Next. Create a new virtual disk, please, click Next. 20 gig, store it as a single file, it just helps. Click Next, and then there's your VMDK file, which is your virtual machine hard drive file. So again, you can just accept that, that'll be fine. Click Next, and you have some settings. Okay, click Finish, and there's the VM. It will appear in your list on the left-hand side of the screen. There'll also be a tab option for it as well. So your VM is created. So part 2, we need to now configure it and get the thing to run. So this stage involves powering on the virtual machine. There's a little icon, actually no, not icon, a hyperlink, well, whatever you want to call it, up there. Machine, things to start up, and down the bottom, if you can see here, it might give you a little message about the mouse. and which is, as I was saying previously, if you want to get the mouse back to your host, if you've clicked on your VM, if you've clicked on the VM, the virtual machine takes control of your mouse. If you want to get the mouse back to the host machine, your computer that you're sitting in front of, then hold down Control and Alt at the same time, and you get your mouse back. So suffice to say, in the end, you get this thing here, which is your Kali, if you like, welcome screen. We want you to do a graphical install. You can use your mouse or the keyboard to do that. If it doesn't work first time, try clicking it a couple of times. Otherwise, if it really doesn't work, then one thing that I did find once is it seems to freeze the system. Now, if you have a problem at this point with the installation process and the graphical install option didn't work, and your installation seems to have frozen, there's only really one thing to do, which is to remove the virtual machine, reboot the host, and then literally start from scratch again. Obviously, you don't need to uninstall and reinstall VMware, but you will need to create a new virtual machine from the start of this section. So if you need to remove the VM, that's how you do it. It's inside the menu option, as you can see there. You'll have to delete it. If you need to do that, click yes, and then close down VMware, and then reboot your computer. If it doesn't work again, try it again. It's just one of those things. There's not much we can do to fix it, really. It's just one of those things. Suffice to say here, because I've done the reboot, you can see that my Kali Linux VM has gone. So I went through it again, and if we get to the stage where it does work, you will eventually end up on this screen. So English for the language. Change your location from the default of United States to United Kingdom. Continue button, by the way, is down there. British English for your keyboard. And the installation continues. There's some file copying and some installation / network detection / various little bits and pieces that go on. You can just watch that. It just takes a minute. Suffice to say, there's a bit more networking configuration, etc., etc. And then on this stage, you do a bit more typing and setting up. So first thing is here is the host name. And the host name, leave it as Kali, click continue, leave the domain name blank / empty, click continue, and then here put in your full name, whatever that might be. Okay. And click continue again, that button down there. So in terms of setting up users and passwords, the instructions in the lab document are make your username and your password your first name. That means that you won't forget them. So the username for your account should be your first name, only in lowercase. Set your password to be your first name, only in lowercase. Linux is case sensitive, Kali Linux also. Let's just keep it simple, lowercase for everything. It won't do you any harm. And click continue. Add your password there. Click continue. Bit more on-screen activity, and then the options here involve setting up the hard disk. And for the most part, if you have a look at these instructions, guided use entire disk, and then there's this listing thing, it'll be the default. I would suggest that you can just click continue as you go through this. All files in one partition, click continue, and then finish partitioning and save the changes to disk, and click continue. Okay, when that's happened, there's just one more thing which you need to change from no to yes, which is basically, do you want to make this happen? Yes, you do. Turn it to yes, click continue, and the installation can actually start to happen. Take about 5 minutes to do this bit, so you can do whatever you want to do in that time. And then for the final, should I say the next bit of this particular piece of work, leave the proxy HTTP blank because we're not using a proxy. Click continue, wait a minute or two, and in the software section, leave the selection as it is, it'll be fine. That's the list. So you don't need to check or uncheck anything, you can just click continue, and then again, there's this installation in terms of downloading and installing and all that sort of thing. So this might take some time. I want to say some time, maybe around 10 to 15 minutes for this one. If it turns out that you see something like this during the file copy, you didn't turn off your antivirus, and as you can see, if the antivirus does one, it basically stops the things that you need to be downloaded from being downloaded, so you wouldn't have a full version of Kali, if you like. So basically, if it turns out that you see that, you'll have to start again, remembering to disable your antivirus. Once that piece of the file copying and installing takes 10-15 minutes has happened, 1 or 2 more bits to do. Yes, for the Grub bootloader scenario, click continue. Again, this is all just hard drive stuff. Again, that's the link to the hard drive. Just click continue, it'll be fine. The installation does a bit more clicking around for a minute, and then finally, after a minute or two, it will say that the installation is complete, as you can see there, and you can click continue. And then at this particular time, once it reboots, you've got the opportunity, after it finishes loading up, to put in your username and password. So please do that. You should know that it's your full name. And then here, what happens is you get the screen. And then to show that this is your work, when you submit this particular part of the work into the ePortfolio, click on the blue dragon icon, which is in that top corner there. And then what happens is it shows your username. So we know that this is your installation and your work, and that there hasn't been any sharing of information where sharing wouldn't be useful. So there we go. Get your own work done, sorted out. You've got your own version of Kali. We'll show you how to use it. So screenshot that. So the screenshot needs to go into your report, your ePortfolio thing, to show that you've completed the task. If you can't take screenshots using Windows Print Screen, use the snipping tool and you'll be able to get that particular screenshot. And then in terms of the installation and this section here, again, by the way, that's in the lab, that's got one of those CCTV cameras, so you know to take a screenshot of that. And you also need to take a screenshot of your settings, which will look a little bit like this, etc. So basically, when that's sorted out, there's the thing down here which says I finished installing, so you might as well click on that because it effectively tells the VM that that bit is finished. And then if you still need to install your VMware tools, that might become available. It's a bit of a situation to get it installed, but if you have a look at the instructions, you can always have a go at that at some point. And yeah, finally, if you finish with the Kali Linux for now, if you click this sort of circle with a line in it icon at the top here on the top right, you get the shutdown button there, and you click shutdown, and it goes back to the screen inside VMware Workstation, and then you can shut down your virtual machine as well, and you're done. So the whole idea of that video was to take you through that process so that you can see what's going on. So now what I'm thinking is you can have a look at this video, maybe have a look at it again, and then when you're doing your installation, you can use this as a way to take you through each stage so that you know what's coming up. And I'll see if I can do other videos for some of the other work that you'll be doing to support you with that as well. So, okay, thanks for checking this out, and yeah, it looks as if that might be us. Yeah, I would say that it looks as if that might be us.